Although the gravitational force of the Saturn is not sufficient to tear the planet apart from a distance, it is ample enough to removing a portion of the atmosphere and giving rise to tidal surges ranging from several hundred meters to several kilometers, submerging most major cities worldwide. After that, as if that were not destructive enough, the tidal force of the second-largest gas planet in the solar system can also rip apart continents drifting on Earth's surface, creating something you would have to struggle to imagine. Tidal surges of rock and magma. Hello, delighted to meet you all again in our space-themed video. If a vote were held for the most beautiful planet in the solar system, Saturn would undoubtedly have a high if not the highest ranking. It would be wonderful if we could swap the position of the moon with this magnificent planet so that everyone worldwide could admire the majestic and enchanting giants of the solar system. However, whether this is a crazy idea, what would happen to humans and the planet Earth if Saturn were magically replaced by the moon in space will be answered in this video. Before answering the question of what would happen if the moon were replaced by Saturn, let's once again make sure that you are aware of how large Saturn is. In short, Saturn is a gas giant primarily composed of two elements, hydrogen and helium. On the scale of size, Saturn is the second largest planet in the solar system, just slightly smaller than Jupiter. Saturn is about 9 times the diameter, 84 times the surface area, 95 times the mass, and 763 times the volume of Earth. However, due to being mainly composed of gas, Saturn's density is less than that of water. Funnily speaking, Saturn can float on a water pots. If Saturn were endowed with some supernatural power and placed in the position of the moon, many fascinating things would happen. Firstly, the scene would be incredibly breathtaking if Saturn were placed in the position of the moon in space. It would stand out even during the daytime. It would occupy about 15% of the original space between Earth and the moon. In the sky, Saturn would appear 35 times larger than the current size of the moon, and its rings would stretch almost from one end to the other across the horizon. The sudden appearance of a colossal object in the sky would arouse curiosity. People would temporarily pause their activities to admire this rare sight. TikTokers and YouTubers would rush to review and discuss its beauty in an attempt to gain popularity. The good news is that Earth is far enough and moving through space at a sufficient speed to avoid being torn apart by Saturn. The Roche limit is the distance at which the tidal forces from a larger celestial body will cause the smaller one to disintegrate into smaller pieces, similar to how wives tear apart their husbands when discovering they have a secret affair. The Roche limit of the Moon to Earth is approximately 9,400 kilometers. This means that the Moon would disintegrate into fragments orbiting Earth, or, more precisely, it would become a ring of debris around Earth if it crosses the 9,400 kilometers threshold measured from the Earth's surface. Similarly, the habitable zone for Earth around Saturn falls within about 36,700 kilometers. Fortunately, the average distance between Earth and the Moon is a whopping 384,400 kilometers, wide enough to accommodate all the remaining planets in the solar system, perhaps to line up for good behavior certificates or to organize a weekend barbecue party. In reality, Earth is not only far enough to avoid being torn apart, but also moving fast enough not to be pulled towards Saturn. According to calculations, at a distance of 384,400 kilometers, Earth would only need a speed of 9.3 kilometers per second to orbit Saturn without falling onto its surface and 13.1 kilometers per second to escape the gravitational pull of the gas giant. Meanwhile, our planet is traversing the cosmos at a speed of nearly 30 kilometers per second. This means that if Saturn were placed in the exact position of the Moon in space, Earth wouldn't be pulled toward it. However, that seems to be the last piece of good news in this scenario. The first unfortunate news is that the role of Earth would be altered. It would no longer be a planet. A planet needs to orbit the Sun, and Earth would lose that capability. In space, between two or more objects orbiting each other, there always exists a center of mass, which is the point around which the objects revolve. The center of mass for the Saturn-Earth system, in this calculation of mine, is nestled within Saturn, just about 4,000 kilometers from the center of the gas giant. When viewed from above, Earth almost officially becomes Saturn's 84th natural satellite, orbiting it. The reassuring news is that we will become the largest natural satellite, surpassing the combined mass of the other 83 remaining satellites. Bigger and heavier, it's an impressive spectacle. However, let's not hastily entertain the idea of bullying the old satellites. On the contrary, the inhabitants of the Earth should start to be afraid. Dione, the fourth largest satellite. Now the fifth largest satellite of Saturn, has an orbital radius of about 377,400 kilometers, which is only 7,000 kilometers away from the orbital radius of Earth around the new parent planet. A collision with the Moon, with a diameter of 1,123 kilometers, would undoubtedly result in an infrequent word appearing on my channel, destroying all life on our planet, turning its once-hot planetary surface into a molten ocean before merging with it. However, it could take many years for Earth and Dione to enter a collision orbit, and it's quite possible that life on Earth has vanished long before that. It's worth noting that with just a small moon, with a diameter of 27% and a mass of only 1.23% of Earth, tidal forces have produced tidal fluctuations as large as 16.3 meters, as documented in the Bay of Fundy, Canada. Although Saturn's tidal forces can be understood simply as the variation in the intensity of gravitational forces acting on Earth along the direction towards the planet, it is not sufficient to tear Earth apart from a distance. However, it is potent enough to siphon off a portion of the atmosphere, creating tidal surges several kilometers high that could submerge most major cities around the world. If that isn't bad enough, the tidal forces of the second-largest gas giant in the solar system could potentially rip apart the drifting continents on Earth's surface. The tectonic plates and even the Earth's crust could bulge, causing the planet to warp and take on an egg-like shape. Becoming a basic egg shape might not be all bad. At least eggs have been widely liked on Instagram. The detrimental aspect here is the swelling of the Earth's mantle and crust. It will give rise to something you'd struggle to conceive: rock and magmatites. During the era of Saturn's satellite, Earth would no longer require weather forecasts, as unprecedented super-earthquakes and volcanic eruptions would occur daily, akin to global-scale tidal phenomena. Expanding on that, the presence of a giant planet like Saturn within the solar system would also exert a strong influence on the orbits of the remaining rocky planets, including Mercury, Venus, and Mars. Although it would be extremely difficult to capture a collision between celestial bodies with Earth and Saturn or its satellites on a timescale of hundreds of millions of years are entirely possible. Let's make this scenario a bit more cheerful by assuming that Saturn's gravitational forces don't create supertides and won't disturb Earth's rock layers enough for humans and most other creatures to continue living. In that case, what would happen? It's unfortunate that things don't go as smoothly as you'd hope. Similar to how the Earth's moon eventually becomes tidally locked, meaning one side always faces Saturn, Earth will slowly rotate until one day equals the time it takes to orbit Saturn fully. And that not only means half of the world will always see the pale yellow planet and its beautiful belt, while the other half can only catch a glimpse when flying to the other side. But being tidally locked also implies that the duration of day and night will increase from 12 hours to 14 days. One hemisphere will be illuminated for almost half a month, while the other remains in darkness during that same period. The lives of over 8 billion Earth residents would be turned upside down, with the work week extended to 336 hours of continuous nighttime. During the day, people would seek shelter indoors and limit outdoor activities to avoid the scorching heat. On the positive side, the wealthy would actually have the opportunity to experience a unique tour around the colossal gas giant. Scientists would gain much more insight into the fourth largest gas giant than they ever thought possible, studying it up close within a distance of 1 billion kilometers. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what might happen if the moon were replaced by Saturn. What do you think about this scenario? Remember to leave your comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you won't miss out on our interesting space videos. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.